Welcome, guys, to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here in my meditation room, and today our topic is anxiety through uncertain times. This is an empowered mind edition, which means that we have the best hypnotherapist and life coach, in my opinion. Her name is Leanna Lapidus, and she's here to share some expertise with us so we can talk about anxiety in uncertain times. Leanna, how's it going?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. All right. So, Leanna, our topic today is anxiety through uncertain times. Obviously, we are in a quarantine and it's natural to feel anxiety, right? Especially since there's so much that have a question mark next to it. From a hypnotherapist standpoint, what are your thoughts on anxiety?
Our body responds and reacts to what we're thinking about, how we're wording, the situation that we're focusing on. Is if we're focusing on things not working out, if we're focusing on things being bad or fearful, then we're going to cause ourselves anxiety without experiencing it in the present moment.
And what about people that, have legitimate worries? And, I think that this is something that a lot of people can apply to, which is their health, their finances, things that I don't want to say actually matter, but things that actually matter versus the stories that they add on.
Of course. And, there's always going to be something happening in our life that, is uncomfortable, but it's how we perceive it. I understand that sometimes we have, illness and it's happening and it's real, you know, but can we focus on healing from it, feeling healthy and happy? So creating an image in our mind's eye. And actually, that's really powerful because the inner shift starts to happen when we change the images. We no longer need to fear the anxiety itself because the more we fear it, the stronger it becomes.
My take as a recovering addict, I'm recovering from alcohol abuse, is that when I suffered anxiety back then during my addiction, I would fear anxiety, I would fear my thoughts, I would have this misconception that my thoughts were my reality and that the world was going to come to an end. And my coping tool back then was that I would drink and I would turn to those substances. And I think that, there are a lot of people that whether you're a negative thinker or whether you have a substance abuse problem or whether you had a substance abuse problem, it's easy for the mind to go, I'm so worried about a lot of things. I just need to relax this pain, versus what you're saying, which is actually to face it.
Embrace it and look at it. Look at it like over here, bring it into your hand and say, okay, anxiety, why are you here? What are you here to teach me? What do I need to know? And once you start communicating that way with, those different sensations in your body, you will start to, learn and gain a lot more insight and awareness about who you are. And the more we learn about who we are, the more comfortable it is for us to live within our inner world, within ourselves. That is the most important person to get comfortable with because guess what? That's the longest relationship you'll have is with yourself.
That's so true. And I'm going to let these guys in on a session that you and I had when I was experiencing a massive amount of anxiety. Basically, I saw anxiety as an ocean that was dark and it was cold and there was a storm. And I said, Leanna, I'm on the ocean. There's dark waters. I know there's creatures underneath. I have no idea what they are. It's freaking me out. And then what you told me, what if the waters were clear? Which is basically what I was avoiding my entire life, to actually see what was under the water. And then you said, just picture the water to be clear. And I embraced it and pictured the water to be clear. And then I saw creatures, and yes, I was still terrified. And then you were guiding me through it, and you were saying, "Or what do they want from you?" And then I was saying, "I think they want to eat me. I just don't want them to hurt me." And then you said, "Well, maybe you can tell them to kindly go away." And then I did, and then the creatures went away, and all of a sudden you helped me create an even bigger picture, which is, who's out on the sand? And I said, my family, they're so beautiful. And then it became warm out. And it was like, I have goosebumps literally talking about this again. But Leanna basically changed my perspective on what anxiety was to me. And I think people have a perspective that anxiety is harmful, which it can be, but you're saying that we can actually use anxiety as a tool to empower ourselves, which I think is so beautiful.
Absolutely. We can learn from it, and it's real and it's happening. And it really is sometimes just knocking on our door and saying, hey, you know what? Look at me. Look at me, understand yourself better, and the more we do that, the more we tap into it, we get more and more insightful, about the being that we are within, and we no longer have to fear the anxiety or allow the anxiety to control us, but now we're in charge.
That's exactly right. And then I know that a lot of people, including myself at times, and so I'm being very mindful of it, are overthinkers. And overthinking can really lead to anxiety, right? From my point of view, when I overthink, I remind myself that my thoughts are not my reality, and I actually just look at the facts, because I think that there's a lot of people that get convinced that their thoughts are real. Like, this is actually going to happen. Those nightmares that you have in your head, that's going to happen tomorrow, or that's going to happen to this person or to yourself. But it's actually not real. So it's good to just, and you taught me this, to take a step back, give yourself space from your thoughts, and then go, is that real or is that self-created?
So the more we overthink and on the same situation that's causing us anxiety, what it's going to do is it's going to link to other memories from the past that caused our anxiety. And then we're going to convince ourselves more and more that, yeah, actually, this is really happening. And I really should be anxious about the situation, because we're kind of getting lost in our own negative thinking in that pool. We're swimming in that pool of negativity, but it's created by us. I always say, like, anxiety and emotions are to be embraced and looked at, but not to live in.
That's very true. And, I'm going to use a metaphor if that's okay. But Leanna, you have such an adorable dog. I have two dogs. How I compare anxiety when it goes nuts is when you first take in a puppy and you have to train it, and the puppy's gonna poop, pee, tear things up. It really wants your attention. You can either be like, oh, what the hell? This is the worst puppy. Like, why did I get this dog? Or you could actually train it and pet it and walk it and just make sure that it becomes, this trained puppy to your liking. Like, and I feel like there's a lot of us, I used to do this where I would just freak out about the pee and the carpet and the torn up magazines, right? Versus actually training my puppy, so that it would one day grow up to be something that like I'm actually working with, where we're actually like a team versus going against each other.
Once we accept and stop fighting what's happening, it's a lot easier to manage, but the first thing we want to do is like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Let me not feel anxious anymore. What can I do to not feel anxious anymore? And a lot of us who have, who turn to drugs and alcohol just to kind of slow it down. And a lot of people say that to me, in recovery when I'm working with clients, I have too much anxiety. That's why I drink. But we don't need to do that, because, like I said earlier, anxiety is a very powerful tool if we stop fearing it, if we stop being afraid of experiencing within our body. Maybe your anxiety is teaching you that, oh, I just need to be more patient, then it goes away. Or I need to just maybe stop procrastinating and the anxiety subsides, right? So I'm telling you that I found over and over again that the anxiety that we feel is actually a way for our intuition to speak to us.
When I used to acknowledge that I had anxiety, it would look like this. Oh my God, I have anxiety. Shit. Oh, I have anxiety. I can't breathe. I can't. But there's also the other form of acknowledging that I have anxiety because now I meditate and then I go, okay, I have anxiety. Let me understand what is going on with my body. Let me see what's going on in my thoughts. Do you find that to be an important practice to actually sit and just see like what anxiety feels like and what anxiety, looks like in your mind?
Absolutely. And, probably you remember when we worked on, images, like give it a name, give it an image or a shape, a color. And it never fails. Anytime I do that with clients in a trance state, in the hypnotherapy process, they always can come up with an image, a shape, a color, a size, and then when we come back to it, I always ask, so has the image changed? Has the shape changed? Yes, it's smaller. Oh my gosh, it's lighter. Wow, I don't even feel it anymore. It's because we have fear over having anxiety. That's what creates the anxiety to be so intense.
That's right, because after embracing it, I was able to shift my focus on what anxiety was, because anxiety to me was the Bermuda Triangle. And then eventually it became like this, island in Hawaii, where I'm like, okay, versus like fear. There was fear, which was what anxiety was to me, and then there's, okay, like it's trying to tell me something. What? Let me hear it out. Let me hear what it has to say. Versus like, no, 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 thank you. Otherwise, like anxiety is gonna keep knocking on your door, and it will, right? Because you taught me that this isn't something that is just going to go away overnight. It is a practice in a sense.
That's right. And a lot of us are so comfortable in that state that it's almost like hard to unglue themselves from that anxiety. So, and I see that happen all the time because it's so familiar, because they know how to survive in it, even though it's so uncomfortable and they think that they don't want it, but that's where they go because they know how to live in it. So the power of change is difficult in the beginning because you're fighting with 90% versus 10%. So the 90% is your subconscious mind, is the part of you that is familiar, is your homeostasis, is where you're comfortable feeling anxiety. And so the 10% part of you is the conscious and the rational part of you that knows that, you know, I don't want to feel this way.
I was reading a little bit about the science of it, and it's so fascinating that the human body produces 18 billion cells in the course of an hour, and how, if you're depressed or anxious for an hour, let's say, your body's actually producing cells that have receptors that are calling out for more depression or more anxiety. And I think that explains a lot because, like, and from the behavioral standpoint, there are people that want to self-sabotage, but also physiologically, like your body does actually get used to these feelings because it's familiar.
I definitely agree that, our emotions, we do have emotional addictions, and in fact, those are what I look at, in people that are coming in for recovery from alcohol or drugs, because those are the first addictions. And a big one is anger because it has so much power, and we almost crave it. And I can sometimes say that, we relapse into our emotional addictions, especially anger and anxiety, because it does produce this release and excitement, right? And once we, react, we're giving it power in life.
That's exactly right. I know that we've spoken about this before, but I believe that no one ever became an addict because they were positive. Like it all comes from the
For
mind.
sure.
It all stems from the mind because once you start to feel anxiety or depression or anger and it goes too far, then that's when you turn to a substance. So I think it's really important for a lot of people to know that, these emotions that you're feeling should be handled and you should have a relationship with them. Otherwise, if you look the other way, they just become bigger and bigger and they will find a way to come back.
That's right. And, a lot of people, treat their addiction to substances by just not, drinking anymore or not using the drugs, but they never work on their inner emotions. They're really not making any kind of transformative, positive changes in their life.
There was a misconception that if you go through recovery and that you stop drinking or you have left your vices behind, that all of a sudden everything else becomes better, which is not the case. I think sobriety is not a magic pill where I'm like, oh, I don't have anxiety or depression anymore. Like, you still have to deal with it. And I believe that people relapse because they haven't healed that aspect of themselves yet. Like, yes, they could be white knuckling it to not drink or to not turn to a substance, but once they face their anxiety and they don't know how to handle it yet, of course they're going to relapse.
A lot of people will leave one addiction to substance, for example, and then go to another addiction, work, food addiction, love addiction. If we don't treat the behavior that's causing us to feel the need that we need to escape ourselves, we're always going to be just transferring the addictions to another addiction.
So, Leanna, another thing that I think leads to major anxiety attacks or just anxiety in general is catastrophizing. To be able to take something and just completely blow it out of proportion. Sometimes if people have one bad thing happen to them in the day, it becomes a bad day and they kind of forget about like all the good things that they should be grateful for in that day. Can you talk to me a little bit about, our natural instinct to catastrophize situations?
When we're catastrophizing, we think about everything that we don't have, but we're not looking at what we do have in the moment, you know. But that's just the natural way that our mind just wanders away from our truth. So to stay connected and be in connection and in alignment with our true self is to, meditate, to check in, where am I? Like, what am I focusing on? What am I thinking about? It's good to think about what we want, but if we think about what we want in lack of having it, then we're causing ourselves anxiety.
And I also think that it's helpful to define what type of storyteller like anxiety actually is, because we're all storytellers, right? And sometimes anxiety can be this storyteller of just like ghost stories and tomorrow's not going to look good and it's going to be a really sad day. Like, I wanted my anxiety to be the person with a notepad just giving the facts. It's like, okay, so there's bills due tomorrow, and then, you know what I mean? Just give me the facts. Don't make it a ghost story. And that was an important thing for me to learn, was what kind of storyteller is anxiety to you?
Right. But Joel, you were so amazing in your recovery process. You were so dedicated and you still are. You really followed a structured way of living your life, through meditating, through journaling, through positive affirmations, through really taking the time to spend with connecting with your truth. And when we really dedicate that time and effort, we really are able to live a very beautiful, inspiring life. So it's a relationship to really work on, and it doesn't have to be hard.
That's true. Yeah, every day, as you know, I meditate, I do affirmations, which you taught me, but I tell myself I get to experience the day today versus I have to get through the day today, which is how I used to think. But when I think I get to experience the day today, that's when like opportunities and transformation really happens. And I felt that truly. And I can't thank you enough for that. So Leanna, how can our listeners reach out to you?
Thank you, Joel. So the best way to get in touch with me is you can just go ahead and email me at leannalapidus@gmail.com. That's LeannaLapidus@gmail.com. Or you can also follow me on Instagram at Leanna Lapidus Hypnotherapy.
Leanna, thank you so much. You are amazing per usual. And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode where we talk about anxiety through uncertain times. Make sure you continue to subscribe to this podcast. And you can also watch these videos of the show on YouTube in our channel, Mind, Body, and Joel. You can also follow me on Instagram at Joel Relampagos. Thank you again, and we will talk to you next time.